The things I wish I had known before marriage. We were told that love conquers all, but no one told us what happens when love is exhausted. Before marriage, many thought that love alone would be sufficient to bear the weight of marital challenges. But as beautiful as love is, it is never meant to carry the weight of marriage alone. If you want to know the truth about what could carry marriage through different seasons and help you build an enduring home, stay with me for the next few minutes as I take you through the things I wish I had known before marriage. Love may start the journey, but what we build on it determines whether it will last or not. If you enjoy our contents, don't forget to hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Let's begin. 1. Love is not enough. Before marriage, many assume that love is enough to sustain a lifelong partnership, that the emotional highs, chemistry, and connection will carry a couple through any challenge. But while love is a beautiful beginning, it is not a reliable foundation on its own. Love doesn't automatically teach conflict resolution, patience, financial management, or forgiveness. As real-life pressures arise, unmet expectations, stress, or routine, the emotional intensity that once felt invincible begins to fade, revealing that marriage demands much more than romantic feelings. What truly sustains a marriage is not the presence of love alone, but the daily decision to show up with commitment, humility, empathy, and selflessness. Lasting love is built on intentional acts, not passive emotions. Two people can deeply love each other and still fail without accountability, growth, and mutual respect. Real love must be active, rooted in character, and tested through storms. It's not how two people feel that keeps the bond strong. It's how they choose to live when love is challenged. 2. Communication isn't automatic, it's a skill. Before marriage, many assume that love will make communication effortless. But marriage will quickly reveal that communication is not automatic. It's a learned and intentional skill. Words are often filtered through personal experiences, assumptions, and emotional wounds, making what's spoken easily misunderstood. A partner may hear criticism instead of concern, or distance instead of vulnerability, not because of ill intent, but because every person interprets language through their own lens. Effective communication in marriage requires more than just exchanging words. It demands emotional awareness, timing, body language, and above all, presence. What strengthens marital communication is not perfect phrasing, but humility and intentional listening. Rather than assuming or defending, healthy couples ask clarifying questions and prioritize connection over winning arguments. Truth must be delivered with empathy, not blunt force. Communication thrives when partners pause before reacting, speak with care, and sometimes simply choose to be silently supportive. In the end, it's not eloquence, but the consistent effort to understand and be understood that sustains closeness, especially in the quiet, ordinary moments where love is tested and trust is built. 3. You marry a whole history, not just a person. Marriage is far more than a series of romantic moments. It's a commitment to embrace your partner's entire life story, complete with the habits, wounds, and beliefs they've carried long before you met. Early affection may mask these buried patterns, but over time, unhealed trauma and ingrained responses inevitably surface as withdrawal, defensiveness, or mistrust. Recognizing that love alone cannot erase the past, a couple must approach each other's histories with humility, asking questions, listening without judgment, and bearing witness to one another's vulnerable memories. True intimacy is forged not by ignoring what's come before, but by walking through it together, naming old scripts and consciously rewriting them with grace, patience, and truth. The highest act of love becomes a gentle presence, sitting beside your partner in their pain, honoring their story, and affirming, "You are seen, and we will face this together." In this sacred work of mutual healing, marriage transforms two imperfect lives into a shared sanctuary of growth, understanding, and deep connection. 4. Conflict is inevitable, but it doesn't have to be destructive. Many people enter marriage believing that a strong relationship means constant peace and the absence of conflict. But over time, it becomes clear that conflict isn't a sign of incompatibility. It's a natural result of two complex individuals with different histories, expectations, and emotional wounds trying to build a life together. What matters is not whether conflict arises, but how it is handled. Conflict becomes destructive when the goal shifts from understanding to control, or from healing to hurting. However, when approached with empathy, maturity, and a willingness to listen, conflict can actually deepen the connection and reveal areas in need of growth, healing, and better communication. The difference lies in the approach. Fighting to understand builds trust, while fighting to wound breaks it. Simple shifts, like replacing blame with vulnerability, can turn an argument into a moment of deeper intimacy. What strengthens a marriage is not the absence of tension, but the presence of repair, the courage to take responsibility, offer sincere apologies, and intentionally reconnect. When handled with grace and humility, conflict becomes less of a threat and more of a bridge, a powerful opportunity to learn, evolve, and love with greater depth. 5. Your spouse is not your savior. One of the most dangerous myths being carried into marriage is the belief that a spouse will complete the other. It's a romantic notion often fed by movies, music, and culture, that someone out there will fill every emotional gap, heal deep insecurities, and finally make everything feel whole. But the hard truth is, marriage magnifies unhealed wounds. It doesn't magically mend them. Entering marriage with emotional baggage, unresolved trauma, or a fractured identity often leads to projecting those unmet needs onto a partner, many times without even realizing it. Expectations begin to form. The need for constant validation, emotional regulation, and the fulfillment of personal happiness. And when those expectations aren't met, and they rarely are perfectly, disappointment, resentment, and feelings of being unloved begin to surface. Yet, the issue lies not in the absence of love, but in the weight of unrealistic expectations. A spouse is not a therapist, healer, or savior. They can offer presence, encouragement, and genuine love, but they cannot replace the personal journey toward wholeness. Healing is an inward process. It requires confronting personal fears, nurturing old wounds, and rooting identity in something deeper than a relationship. For some, this looks like leaning more fully into faith, emotional growth, and honest self-reflection. No one can instill a sense of worth that hasn't first been cultivated within. Expecting a partner to be the sole source of happiness reduces them to a role they were never meant to play. Over time, the pressure of that role can strain, even fracture, the strongest bonds. True intimacy emerges not from completion, but from complementing whole individuals walking together through growth, struggle, and evolution. The strongest marriages observed are not built on perfection, but on mutual ownership of healing and wholeness. Love flows from abundance, not from emptiness. Support exists without suffocation. For those not yet married, the inner work begins now. For those already married, the invitation is to release the partner from the role of savior. Allow them to be a companion, not a fixer. The more peace that is cultivated within, the more peace is brought into the union. In the end, the greatest gift one can offer a spouse is a whole, grounded, and emotionally mature self. 6. Intimacy goes beyond the physical. Before marriage, intimacy is often mistaken for physical closeness, touch, chemistry, and desire. But over time, it becomes clear that real intimacy goes far deeper. It is emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and relational. True intimacy is found not just in moments of passion, but in the quiet acts of presence, deep conversations, shared silence, and the courage to be emotionally vulnerable. It's in the moments where one says, "Here's my weakness," and is met with love, not judgment. This kind of connection doesn't happen automatically. It is intentionally cultivated. It grows when trust is nurtured, when apologies are sincere, when forgiveness is given freely, and when both partners feel safe enough to be their full selves. Real intimacy emerges when the goal shifts from impressing to truly connecting, and when both individuals remain present, not just physically, but with open hearts and listening souls. 7. Sacrifice is not a weakness, it's the backbone of partnership. Before marriage, sacrifice is often seen as grand or heroic, but within marriage, it reveals itself in the quiet, everyday choices, choosing silence over being right, showing up when tired, and prioritizing presence over personal preference. These small, unseen acts become the real substance of love, transforming sacrifice from something that feels like loss into a meaningful investment. Rather than silencing personal needs, true sacrifice weaves two lives together with mutual respect, deep empathy, and shared compassion. Over time, it becomes clear that marriage isn't a battle to win, but a sacred space to serve. Real strength is not measured by dominance, but by the willingness to yield, listen, and give without keeping score. When both partners embrace this selfless posture, something sacred emerges. Trust grows, emotional safety is cultivated, and love deepens into covenant. Sacrifice, when mutual and motivated by love rather than fear, becomes the backbone of lasting partnership, not weakness, but wisdom in action. 8. Forgiveness isn't optional. It's the oxygen of a lasting relationship. Forgiveness in marriage is not reserved for major betrayals. It is a quiet, daily discipline shaped by the small missteps and emotional misfires of everyday life. Rather than being a one-time event, forgiveness is a habit, a choice to release offense, choose peace over pride, and preserve connection through grace. It acknowledges that mistakes and misunderstandings are inevitable, not because love is lacking, but because both partners are human. These aren't dramatic wounds, but subtle erosions that, if left unaddressed, slowly wear down intimacy. Forgiveness, then, becomes less about justice and more about protecting the heart from bitterness and keeping love alive. True forgiveness in marriage often feels more like surrender than strength. Yet it is this very surrender that sustains the relationship. It refuses to let pain dictate the course of love, choosing instead to heal silently, sometimes through prayer, sometimes through gentle letting go, often without fanfare. When both spouses embrace this rhythm, the marriage transforms into a safe haven, not defined by perfection, but by mercy. The couples who thrive are not those without conflict, but those who keep returning to each other with humility, grace, and the resolve to begin again. 9. The foundation must be bigger than both of you. Before marriage, it's easy to believe that compatibility, shared interests, and emotional connection are enough to sustain a lifelong relationship. The ease of conversation, aligned dreams, and mutual affection create a strong beginning. But over time, it becomes clear that feelings are not a reliable foundation. Emotions are subject to change, and seasons of life bring trials that test even the deepest chemistry. What holds two people together in one season may not anchor them in the next, unless there is something greater upholding the union. For marriage to truly endure, it must rest on a shared foundation that goes beyond emotion, something stable, transcendent, and mutually embraced. Whether rooted in a living faith or a set of shared values and purpose, this deeper anchor becomes essential when life's inevitable storms come. When grounded in something greater than the individuals themselves, the relationship gains resilience and clarity. It's not just about being in love, but about building on something unshakable. Because without a firm foundation, love alone cannot carry the weight of forever. 10th, serving each other builds safety. One of the most powerful truths in marriage is that love flourishes not through perfect balance or fairness, but through intentional, wholehearted service. Rather than keeping score or expecting equality in every moment, true connection is built through small, consistent acts of care, done not out of duty, but from a desire to uplift and support. Service in marriage is not about diminishing oneself. It's about creating emotional safety, where both partners feel seen, heard, and valued. In these quiet offerings, whether it's doing the dishes, listening without interrupting, or simply being present, trust is deepened and intimacy is quietly strengthened. What makes this kind of service transformative is that it expects nothing in return, yet naturally invites reciprocity. It becomes a rhythm of giving and receiving rooted in gratitude, not obligation. While the load may feel heavier on some days due to life's challenges, the strength of the relationship is found in both partners giving their all, not just meeting halfway. Marriage becomes less about fairness and more about faithful, sacrificial love. This kind of love doesn't compete. It protects, nurtures, and perseveres. In doing so, it becomes a refuge, where both can feel safe even in the hardest seasons. 11. Every marriage has seasons. Embrace the cycle of growth. Every marriage experiences seasons, much like nature, times of ease and warmth, as well as periods of transition and silence. Spring and summer bring affection, connection, and lighthearted joy, while autumn introduces change and adjustment. Then comes winter, where love is tested in quiet, difficult stretches that feel uncertain and cold. But these seasons aren't signs of failure. They are part of the natural rhythm of relational growth. Just as trees appear lifeless in winter while their roots strengthen beneath the surface, marriages often deepen during these unseen, silent moments. Emotional winters can be confusing and painful, prompting doubts and questions, yet they are not the end. They are the proving ground where love matures into commitment. It is in these seasons that presence matters more than solutions, and gentle faithfulness becomes the truest form of care. Successful marriages don't avoid the hard times. They learn to walk through them with grace, holding on when it's hardest. The strength of a marriage isn't measured by how happy it feels in the good times, but by how resilient it remains in the storm, trusting that spring will come again. 12th, boundaries are necessary even in love. In the early stages of love, boundaries are often mistaken for distance or rejection, leading many to believe that constant availability and self-sacrifice are the ultimate signs of devotion. However, as relationships mature, it becomes evident that love without boundaries is unsustainable. It slowly erodes emotional health, fosters resentment, and silences individuality. True intimacy and connection cannot flourish when one constantly says yes, at the expense of personal needs, rest, or identity. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are the conditions that protect it from burnout and imbalance. Healthy boundaries create a foundation of mutual respect and emotional safety, allowing both partners to express themselves honestly and love freely without fear of punishment or rejection. They protect personal well-being while honoring the relationship, reinforcing that love is not about losing oneself, but about bringing one's whole self into the union. In this way, boundaries deepen intimacy, not by limiting closeness, but by creating space for authenticity, trust, and mutual care. Love that is refined by healthy boundaries becomes more resilient, more respectful, and ultimately more enduring. 13. Marriage will change you. Let it. Marriage is often imagined as the joy of finding the right person, but the more profound truth lies in the process of becoming the right person. From the very beginning, marriage acts as a refining mirror, gently revealing flaws like impatience, selfishness, or fear, not to shame, but to transform. It shifts the focus from personal preferences and ideals to learning the disciplines of compromise, intentional communication, and selfless service. Rather than being a destination of emotional fulfillment, marriage becomes a sacred ground for character development and maturity. This journey consistently stretches beyond comfort, demanding love when it's hard, forgiveness when it's undeserved, and patience when it feels depleted. The struggles that arise aren't failures, they are invitations to grow. While ego may resist the discomfort, those very tensions become the soil for lasting transformation. Over time, what once felt like breaking points reveal themselves as turning points, building wisdom, resilience, and depth that could never have been formed in ease alone. The essence of marriage is not in achieving perfection, but in committing to progress, growing together through seasons of joy, conflict, silence, and sacrifice. It is a journey where mistakes are not failures, but sacred opportunities to repair and reconnect. As two lives intertwine, marriage becomes a refining fire that purifies love, softens pride, and draws out deeper character. The process is not about having it all figured out, but about showing up daily with humility, learning through imperfection, and embracing the transformation that comes with partnership. Over time, marriage reveals that happiness is not its highest goal, but wholeness. Change becomes inevitable, but rather than erasing identity, it draws forth the best parts waiting to emerge. The true strength of a marriage lies in its ability to teach patience, cultivate compassion, and challenge each person to grow beyond selfishness. The wedding is just the beginning. The real work is in the becoming. When both partners embrace grace, humility, and emotional maturity, marriage becomes not just a bond, but a journey toward depth, resilience, and lifelong transformation.